going on? Welcome in the Matt Bernier Show, DRF TV, live.drf.com, livestream.com, the Daily Racing Forms Twitter handle at DRF Inside Post, as well as the Daily Racing Forms Facebook page. My name is Matt Bernier. You can follow me on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. This is the preview edition, taking a look at a big day of racing up at Saratoga. Saratoga Springs, New York, Saturday afternoon. The marquee event, the Grade 1 Travers, the Midsummer Derby. That is the highlight of the entire day, but you've got graded stakes all over the place. Many of them of the Grade 1 variety. Here on this show, I'm going to give you a little bit of a quick look at the Pick 6 sequence. That's races 6 through 11. It kicks off with 3-year-olds going 7/8 on the main track in the H. Allen Jerkens, and it wraps up with the Grade 1 Travers. We'll go over all those races a little bit, give you a couple horses maybe you want to consider if you are going to play that Pick 6. If you listen to this thing podcast like most of you do, YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, video.drf.com, as well as Spotify. If you listen on YouTube, click that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up. You get all the latest offerings from DRF TV. If you listen on iTunes, write us a little review, give us a positive rating. Always greatly appreciated. Let's dive right into it, shall we? The first leg of this Pick 6 sequence on Saturday up at the spot is the Grade 1 H. Allen Jerkens, formerly known as the King's Bishop. Let's take a look at the field. It's an interesting spot, and I say let's take a look at the field. More so, there's one horse in here to me that I hate to say it is a standout, because a standout is always a dangerous thing to throw into the sort of vocabulary when discussing a field, especially like this, when you've got 9 really talented 3-year-olds. I think there's one horse, though, that from a pace dynamic standpoint, from a running style standpoint, from a speed figure standpoint, I just have a hard time getting past him. We're going to go back right now and take a look at the stretch run of the Amsterdam. That's the local prep for this race here. It's at 6.5 furlongs, and I think finally you saw an instance where a little bit more of a favorable pace situation and maybe a new dimension for a horse called Promises Fulfilled that could possibly catapult him into bigger and better things going forward. Here's Larry Colmus with the stretch run.
Fulfilled, who will have to deal with Engage, and Strike Power tries to battle on, but he's starting to lose ground to Promises Fulfilled, who drifts in with 1 furlong to run. Engage trying to come and get him. Promises Fulfilled, something left in the tank here. Engage is 2 lengths behind, and he's not gonna get him. Promises Fulfilled, strong in the Amsterdam. He won it by 3. Engage was second, and then it was a late...
To me, that day was not just an eye-opening performance, but that was all of a sudden, oh, wait a minute, we might have something here. Everybody always knew how talented Promises Fulfilled was, but they were going, look, everybody had Derby fever. They went through, he won the Fountain of Youth. Florida Derby, they went unbelievably fast. No good. Kentucky Derby, went out there and set an unbelievable pace. No good. The Woody Stevens set a wicked pace and somehow was one of the horses still sticking around at the end. He finished 3rd that day. Give him a little bit of time off, comes back up the spa, shows a new dimension that he can sit off of a horse and make up ground. That was at 6.5. I thought he was lengthening down the lane, pulling away from a horse like Engage, who had the best of it in each of his past 2 races from a pace standpoint. To me, Promises Fulfilled, hate to say it, I think he's a standout in here. If I'm going to play the Pick 6, which is still TBD, got to wait and see what some scratches look like. Maybe we get a little bit of a carryover into Saturday. I don't know. We'll wait and see. I just look at it and say there are too many positives here. And I respect anyone that looks at it and says that 108 buyer that just jumps off the page and, is he going to bounce off of it? Is he going to do... The reason I'm not inclined to... I can't remember who said it, but there have been a number of well-known handicappers throughout the years that have said, along the lines of the bounce theory, do not expect a bounce unless it's happened before, or something along those lines. Don't expect them to just all of a sudden fire a dud. You have a horse coming in arguably the best form, and we'll talk about Frenzy Fire momentarily, but don't just project that there's going to be a bounce, because we don't know that. Could he bounce? Could he? Of course. Any of these horses off of a giant effort could stub their toe and be a little bit tired. But the thing that at least gives me reason to believe that he's going to be, if anything, might be even better than what we saw in the Amsterdam, was he has had so many hard races already this year. And he's bounced back, and he has shown that big speed early on in each one of them. And okay, he gets tired, whether it's distance, whether it's pace dynamics, whatever else it may be. But he continues to come back. And he came back in that Amsterdam, and he fired a giant shot. And also, when you look at the pace dynamic of this race, you've got Gadoo trying dirt for the first time. Maybe he's going to be able to handle it. Maybe not. Maybe his speed will translate to the dirt. Maybe it won't. if they decide to go, so be it. You know you can sit just off of him. I know you're down on the inside, but there's no one else around you that has your kind of gate speed. If Gadu wants to go, let him go. Sit just off of him. If he doesn't want to go, take this field gate to wire. To me, he's a standout in here. Forense Fire, the 107 that he earned in the Dwyer, he was awesome that day, no question about it. He's another one. Finally let him do what he wants to do. You get a giant effort. My concern with him here, it's not so much, is he good enough? I just don't think he's going to get the pace that he needs to kind of come from the back of the pack. You're going to have promises fulfilled, possibly having a 4 to 5 length head start on a horse like Forense Fire, unless they're intent on getting him into the run a little bit earlier, Forense Fire. But I just don't think he's going to be able to close that kind of gap. I really don't. You've got other nice horses in here. I mean, this is a good field, still having fun. He was the one that took advantage of that giant pace in the Woody Stevens. Look, if you told me he'd get a similar situation, a similar scenario on Saturday afternoon, I would be interested in him, but he's not going to. On paper, it doesn't look like he's going to. I can't imagine anybody going guns blazing. Give me a minute. He's been a little bit of an underachiever. Engage. I made mention. The past 2 races, he's had unbelievable setups, and he hasn't been able to win either time. To me, that's a bit of an indictment. I think he's going to come with a good run. Maybe he runs 2nd, 3rd, or 4th. I just don't think he's going to be able to make up enough ground to beat promises fulfilled. And Telekinesis, I guess, is a bit of a wild card in a spot like this for Mark Cass. He tried the Queen's Plate most recently. The distance, I guess it was too much for him, but he'd had no problem at 1 1/8 2 starts back. I don't know. I'm torn on this horse as a whole because he debuted with a 90 buyer and he hasn't done anything faster than that in 5 starts. So Telekinesis, he's the kind of horse I'll be interested to see what he does, but I don't want to have him anywhere as far as plays are concerned. If I'm playing this pick 6, I have a single to come right out. And agree, disagree, whatever else it may be, fire away in the comments below, the YouTube player, or on YouTube, on Twitter, at Bernier_Matt. I just think promises fulfilled. He's too tough to get around. He's going to be a short price. He should be the favorite in here. I had a hard time getting by him. To me, standout in the first leg of this pick 6 sequence. I would single promises fulfilled in the 8 Allen Jerkens. Let's move on to race number 7. Second leg of the pick 6 on Saturday is really... It's a fascinating race. It's not a big field, but it's the Grade 1 Personal Ensign, 1 1/8 on the main track. These are for fillies and mares, 3-year-olds and up. And it's only a field of 6, but it feels like it's very much a showdown between arguably the 2 best older females that we have in the country. You have Elate breaking from the far outside and breaking from the far inside on the inside rail. You have Abel Tasman. Now, Abel Tasman and Elate, they've had their showdowns in the past. Specifically up at Saratoga, happened last year as 3-year-olds in the Coaching Club American Oaks, in which Abel Tasman was able to get the better of her, only by a head, keep in mind. This is one of those weird races where the 2 favorites, I think most people would agree, they're very clearly the best horses in the race. Having said that, let's start with Abel Tasman. She wins the Ogden Phipps by the country mile. She does her sort of new, I guess this is just what she does, her patented brush up to the front. She's going to show a little bit more speed than she had early on in her career. And that's not totally, out of the blue sort of thing. Some of these fillies or mares, as they get older, they continue to show newer dimensions. My concern with that race, as awesome as she was, the field she beat has come back very, very weak. And I say very weak for the Grade 1 level. Your runner-up, Ivy Bell, came back and earned an 87. Unbridled Mo, an 85. And the 6th place finisher was the next out winner, but only with an 87. So, yes, I realize there were 7.5 lengths between her and the runner-up. But the point is, she didn't really face a great field that day. And now she's going to have to face a horse like Elate and some other horses, who we'll touch on, that it just feels like this is going to be her first real test since the Breeders' Cup Distaff. And she ran her eyeballs out that day. She was arguably one of the best horses in there. I thought it was a really strong effort. And again, it's from a pick 6 standpoint, I don't think you can throw out a horse like Abel Tasman out. I also don't think you can throw a horse like Elate out, breaking from the far outside. Now, again, very similar to what I just echoed with Abel Tasman in the field that she beat in the Phipps. You look at this Delaware handicap that she came back and won. She beat a terrible field. Sneaky Betty, the runner-up, earned a 75 in her next start. And the 7th and 8th place finishers, they've come back and earned 58 and 63 buyers, respectively. So you look at Elate and you go, okay, 92 buyer, you're a little bit light. You've only really run 2 races in your career that are, air quotes, fast. The Belle Dame in the Alabama, a 98 and a 97 buyer. Otherwise, she's never cracked anything higher than a 93. I'm going to be a little bit kinder to Elate and say, you know what? First start off of a long, long layoff, going 1.25 miles. You couldn't have done much more. At the end of the day, though, I'm a little bit concerned about what you beat. And I also think, too, from a tactical standpoint, she made that brush up on the backside, but I think that was a product of Jose Ortiz recognizing the pace wasn't that fast, and we're just the best. Let's go. And we're going to be able to outstay everyone. This race is at 1.25 miles, maybe I would think a little bit differently. I don't think you can throw either one of them out, but to be frank, I don't know that I love either one of them in this race. I want to see what they're capable of. I'm more interested in this race, in all honesty, from a visual standpoint, not from a betting standpoint. But because we're talking about the pick six, I think you need to use both of them. And I think you at least want to consider one or two more horses. We're going to take a look right now, going back to the most recent start for these horses anyway, up at Saratoga, the Grade 3 Chuvy. 1.125 you had Farrell and you had Wildcat, the first and second place finishers in that race. Wildcat was the bee's knees coming in. She was unbeaten in her native Chile. She comes in here for Chad Brown. Brown was talking just unbelievably highly of this filly, and we didn't know what we were going to get. We didn't know running style. We didn't know ability, any of that kind of stuff. With Farrell, you've always known what her game is. Her game is speed. Perhaps she's a little bit distance challenged. Maybe she's best at 1 mile or 1 mile and 16th. First things first, let's go back and take a look at the tape. Here's Larry Colmus with the stretch run.
8-3. Ivy Bell on the outside comes alive, and Wildcat is still in the mix, fighting on between those two, but Farrell is still there with a furlong to run, and suddenly Verve's Tail is going to join the fray too. It's Farrell on the inside, Wildcat outside, Ivy Bell and Verve's Tail, and they're all coming to the wire together, and Farrell holds on in the Chuvy.
Farrell, I think, was the beneficiary of a relatively soft pace throughout. And I think with the presence of one of the Luch horses in here, she takes heart. I can't imagine her being able to get out there to just such a cushy lead. I also think there's a scenario with Abel Tasman showing her normal sort of brush down to the front, as well as Elate having a little bit of tactical speed, that this is going to be a much more honest pace. And that's why I'm interested in giving Wildcat another chance, because you don't hear Chad Brown speak that highly of horses that often. And he made it sound like she could be the next big thing. And I don't think she ran poorly, but I didn't think she ran great. But you need to factor in that she had not been seen since early December of last year. That was her first start in a really long time. Her first start here in the United States. Her first start in a graded stakes race here. I think there was a lot going against her in that spot. I'm expecting a forward move. Is it enough to run with Abel Tasman in the late? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But from a gambling standpoint, I think she's a heck of a lot more attractive than taking a short price on either one of those two fillies and mares. I kind of feel like Wildcat, I want her in the pick. Farrell, no disrespect, but I'm going to fade you. I think you're just going to have a much more difficult time this time around. If I'm playing the pick six, I'm using 3 in here. I'm using Abel Tasman, I'm using Elate, and I'm using Wildcat. And my pick in the race is Wildcat, hopefully getting a forward move. Second start off the long layoff for Chad Brown, and at a little bit of a better price, maybe upsetting the two big girls and giving you a little bit of added value as far as the pick is concerned. We turn the page. Let's move on to race number 8. The Grade 1 action continues to roll along. Race 8, Grade 1, 7/8 of a mile on the main track for fillies and mares, 3-year-olds and up, the Grade 1 Ballerina. This is a giant race, and you've got a pretty solid field put together. 9 of them are signed on in here. And this, to me, is one of the races where if you're playing this sequence, this also happens to be the kickoff leg of the $1 Million Guaranteed Pick 4. Illman and I will have a video up on Friday on video.drf.com. I believe it will be a ticket maker play as well, so you're certainly going to keep an eye out for that. As far as this exercise, the pick 6 is concerned, I still think this is an instance where you can spread. You might be able to find a horse or two that maybe is better value, but I also wouldn't fault anyone that looks at it and says, you know what, arguably the horse to beat in here is Finley's Lucky Charm, because all she does is go out there and run her race. I had said prior to the Honorable Miss that I didn't think she was as good as a 5-year-old as she was as a 4-year-old. And that was saying something, because she was already a Grade 1 winner in the Madison earlier this year at Keeneland. At 7/8, mind you, which is going to be important because 7/8 of a mile is the distance they're going to go on Saturday. I'm still even not convinced that she's as good as she was last year. And that still may sound a little bit funny, especially on the heels of an impressive effort like this. Larry Colmus with the stretch run of this year's Honorable Miss.
Half they're into the stretch. Finley's Lucky Charm on the outside, and a stubborn Vertical Oak at the rail. The two of them arrive at the 8th pole with Finley's Lucky Charm in front. Opening up now from Vertical Oak at the 16th pole. The others have been left reeling behind. Finley's Lucky Charm scores in the Honorable Miss by 2.5 lengths. Vertical Oak was...
104 Buyer, highest last out number in the field. She looked brilliant out there. She broke sharp. She pressed the pace. She went on with it. I don't necessarily love her at 7/8. I like her going a little bit shorter. 6.5 furlongs. She can win at 7/8. Well documented. Something nagging at me that I just don't know that she's as good as she was. Am I bold enough to throw her out? If I'm playing the pick six, you're probably going to have to make decisions at some point unless you've got deep, deep pockets. One of my decisions would be I'm going to try to beat Finley's Lucky Charm here at a short price. She's probably in that 5-2, 3-1 range when it's all said and done. Respect her, very talented. Don't know that I want her in a spot like this. Another horse that I think she's talented, but I don't want her in a spot like this is Lewis Bay. Lewis Bay is another one in here for Chad Brown, and her big problem had always been she was just a nibbler, and it usually seemed like when there was a good field, she always found at least one better than her. Now, perhaps she turned the corner. We're going to go back and take a look at her most recent start. This is a smashing victory at Belmont Park. Here's the stretch run of this year's Better Roses.
They're into the stretch. Lewis Bay off the turn, opening up 2.5. Highway Star is second, then Divine Miss Gray, K-Ren, and Not Today for American Gal. A furlong to go, and Lewis Bay is long gone. Lewis Bay and Irad Ortiz Jr. running up the score down to the wire to win the Better Roses. Highway Star was second, K-Ren was third, and Divine.
98 Buyer. She won by more than 5 lengths. You know me, and if you don't like lead change talk, fast forward or mute this until it's done. Very early with the lead change on the far turn, late popping back to her left lead right around the 16th pole. This is her, though. This is her in a nutshell. It's one thing when you do it against a field like that. What happens when you run against better horses? To me, Lewis Bay is the kind of horse at a short number. I don't want her either. I respect her. I think she can hit the board, certainly. She's only been out of the money one time in 15 lifetime starts. Doesn't mean I have to love her in a spot like this, fading her at a short price. Now you're probably sitting there wondering, well, who the hell are you going to pick? I think you have to respect Marley's Freedom. Marley's Freedom, I know that Great Lady M from Los Al has come back weak. The runner-up Sky Diamonds came back to earn a 78 Buyer. Phantom Proton, the third-place finisher, came back to earn a 79 on turf. Marley's Freedom, to me, has always been a horse that is better than perhaps the numbers would suggest. And by the way, that Great Lady M, I have it listed as workmanlike. She did what she needed to do. I don't think she needed to overextend herself. Whenever Baffert ships into New York, you need to keep an eye out because more often than not, they run. That old sort of narrative about him not having success at Saratoga, stupid. He goes up, he wins wherever he goes. Don't overcomplicate things. If Baffert's there, there's a reason. It's a grade 1. Mike Smith has the mount. There's a reason. They're trying to get the cash. Marley's Freedom, I think she is a live shot in here. I'm certainly going to use her. She's not my pick. I'm very interested in a horse, and again, this is one of those tough things with a day like this. And you can even say the same thing for Breeders' Cup time. I'm going to think back a few years ago out at Santa Anita in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. You had a horse called Work All Week, who he was, on figures, he was just a speed machine, and he was very, very fast, but there were class concerns because he had never really faced horses of that caliber just yet. And sometimes they pass the test, and sometimes they don't. There's a horse in this race on Saturday called Still There, the number 3, for Dane Kabisky, and David Cohen has the mount. From a speed figure standpoint, she's got the figs. The question now is, can she do it against better horses? You're going to go right now and take a look at the stretch run with Dave Rodman on the call of her most recent start. I thought this was visually fantastic. This is Still There winning the Twixt Stakes.
Up magical, then Lake Pontchartrain take a lead out in the center of the track. They're coming to the final furlong. Still There, she's there indeed, and opening up 3 lengths under a stiff drive, opening up 3, 4, 5 lengths now as Lake Pontchartrain moves to second. Here is Still There, looking good to win by 5 from Lake Pontchartrain. And then
if she does that, and she can sit that sort of trip, make that big move on the far turn, and just continue on with it, the pedigree is there. She's by Union Rags out of a Smart Strike mare. I like everything about her. She's perfect on the main track going one turn. Her only loss to date was on turf at Belmont Park 2 starts back. Union Rags, his progeny, cannot stand up on grass. He has taken over. I think he's taken the torch from Bernardini as far as throwing just terrible turf prospects. Don't hold that race against her. You've got 3 main track efforts. They're all victories. The smallest margin of victory, by the way, is 2 3/4. I like her a lot in here. She's 12-1 on the morning line. Don't know that you get 12. Maybe she's in that 8-1 range. But at the end of the day, it is. It's a matter of, can she handle the tougher company? I happen to think there's a decent chance that she can. I'm going to go with the number 3 still there in this year's Ballerina for a pick 6 standpoint. Considering I would likely be using 3 horses in the personal Ensign just to make sure that I can get out, I'm going to have to narrow it down a little bit here. Too deep for me. The 3 still there, and the 7 Marley's Freedom. Hopefully we're alive halfway through, and we get on to the final 3 legs. Grade 1 Forego, race number 9, the 4th leg of this pick 6 sequence. There's one horse that they're all going to need to beat, breaking from the far outside, coming in from Southern California. That is City of Light. City of Light, his 2 most recent starts, he went a route of ground. Most recently in the Gold Cup out at Santa Anita, ran a 103 buyer, faded late to finish 3rd, behind a pretty good horse in Accelerate. We saw what he did last weekend in the Pacific Classic. 2 starts back, he defeated Accelerate, going 2 turns in the Oaklawn Handicap down at Oaklawn Park. 3 starts back, though, that's the race that you want to take note of because that's what he's going to be doing here. He came off of a layoff, going 7/8 of a mile in a Grade 1. Saturday, coming off of a layoff, going 7/8 of a mile in a Grade 1. Let's refresh your memory. Michael Ronan with the stretch run of the Grade 1 Triple Bend.
Dhabi being tackled by City of Light with 3/16 of a mile to go. Bobby Abu Dhabi holding on tenaciously. City of Light almost level but having to work overtime. It's Bobby Abu Dhabi on the inside and City of Light. City of Light moving into the lead close to home. City of Light captures the Malibu Triple Bend double on a red letter day for Drayden Van Dyke.
If that City of Light shows up, he's going to be very, very tough. Very tough. He's got 4 consecutive 102 or greater buyer speed figures. That's more basically than the vast majority of this field can say. This is not, I don't think, this is a good field. I don't think it's a superstar-laden field. If City of Light shows up with his A game, I think he's probably just the best horse in the race. I didn't pick him for value purposes. I think he's going to be the favorite, coming off of a layoff, shipping to Saratoga. There's just a few different things that I wanted. I'm going to use him if I'm playing the pick, certainly. But I just kind of feel like there's a scenario where, you know what, if he's not totally cranked up and ready, or he doesn't take to the ship, or he doesn't take to whatever else it may be, maybe there's an opportunity to try to beat him. I will say, when you look at the pace of this race, not a heck of a lot signed on in here. You've got a lot of horses that have tactical speed that don't necessarily want to go to the front. I'd imagine Heartwood goes, and then after that, you might have 2 or 3 or 4 horses that are sitting just off. I think you have to respect CZ Rocket. CZ Rocket for Al Stahl, horse they shipped out to Southern California for the Malibu last year to wrap things up, defeated by City of Light. He's come back, and his Kelly's Landing was smashing. That was just a very, very impressive effort. He never looked like a loser. About 4 or 5 paths out in the clear, never asked for a step. Finally, when they do, he opens up. He wins by 4 lengths with a 103 buyer, co-highest last out in the field. Definitely respect him, using him, picked him 3rd in here behind City of Light, and my pick in this spot is going to be the number 5 horse. A horse that's been a bit of an enigma. Really, you can go all the way back to Triple Crown 2017 when myself and a number of other people thought that No Dozing was going to be something. He was going to be a legitimate talent because he ran so well in that Remsen way back in 2016, and then we found out that Remsen was no good. Came back as a 3-year-old, never really got anything going. Then they put him away until the summer. They ran him in the Allen Jerkens last year, no good. Comes back off a layoff. They tried turf. They've done a bunch of different things with him. Finally, they put him away in mid-November. And you can take a look and see that they gelded him at some point. And he came back, and I thought his return effort was very, very good. And I recognize that so far, the field, it's hit or miss. The runner-up, Behavioral Bias, the horse that he went and ran down, he came back and earned a 91 in his next start, and the 5th-place finisher was the next out winner with an 86. Going to need to run considerably better than that if the form of that race is going to hold up. Having said that, I like that he was close enough to the pace, and he stayed on. He grinded. He earned a 100 buyer that day. He earned a competitive Timeform US rating. I don't think he's going to be totally outrun. Is he class compromised? He might be. He might not be good enough. But I think you might get a good number on this horse, and I don't think he's that far behind some of the better horses. I maintain if City of Light runs his race, he's strictly the horse to beat. I understand people that make cases for Whitmore and Awesome Slew and Limousine Liberal. So it's a nice race put together. I just don't know that you've got any Breeders' Cup sprint sort of threats in here. I don't think Imperial Hint is shaking in his boots. I don't think the horses out in Southern California and the Pat O'Brien on Saturday are shaking in their boots. Maybe with the exception of City of Light. City of Light, the horse to beat. I would use him in the pick. I would use CZ Rocket in the pick as well. My pick and I would obviously use him in the picks, is No Dozing for Arnaud Delacour. Second off the bench, Rosario with the mount. Like that little tactical ability that he's got. Came back. I think the gelding process might have been the thing that changed for him. We'll find out and see how he runs on Saturday. But No Dozing for me, 12-1 on the morning line, I believe, in race number 9, the Grade 1 Forego. We move on to the final 2 legs of the Pick 6 sequence. 1.5 miles on the inner turf, another Grade 1. And I said at the beginning, many Grade 1 races, this is an all Grade 1 Pick 6 sequence. It's reminiscent of the Breeders' Cup. The Grade 1 Sword Dancer. This race really, it's as simple as, what'd you think of the Bowling Green? Because it's almost got the entire field from the Bowling Green coming back, which makes sense. It's the local prep for this race. The one difficult thing to analyze about the Bowling Green. Before we get to that, let's show you the stretch run. Here's Larry Coleman with the call.
Glorious Empire still in front. Glorious Empire has opened up a 4-length lead. Channel Maker up into second. High Happy gives way. Then Sadler's Joy coming to the final 16th. Can Glorious Empire hold on? Channel Maker's trying to run him down. Sadler's Joy is third. Bigger picture on the outside. They're coming down to the wire. Here comes Channel Maker. Here comes Channel Maker, and it's very close.
The difficult thing to analyze about the Bowling Green is the conditions that it was run in. It's run over soft going, and by all accounts, I know I'm in Massachusetts, but I look out the window and the sun is shining, and it sounds like it's doing the same upstate New York. So hopefully everything is fast and firm for Travers Day, and I think that changes the dynamic of the race entirely, because I don't think some of those horses appreciated the soft going. I don't think they like the cut in the ground. They want to hear their feet rattle beneath them, and that can change some things drastically. If you want horses coming out of the Bowling Green, you need to make a call. Who's going to appreciate the firm going? Who's going to appreciate the distance? Who was compromised more so by the soft going? I think there was one horse that I liked going into it, and I'm going to stick with him. My pick in this spot, I'm going to take a little bit of a flyer here. Highland Sky, I think, is coming into it in decent enough form. The Bowling Green, don't think he liked the soft going. 2 starts back, though, that 103 that he earned at Belmont in that optional claimer. It was a salty group, beat Call Provision. I know he's no superstar. Beat Gold Shield. I know he's no superstar either. But I just feel like this is a horse that always had shown promise, and it took him a little while to put it all together, and I think he finally has. They gelded him over the winter, bring him back, and I think he's just finally putting it together. Again, he's not the likeliest win contender or win candidate, but he's going to be a decent number. I think the firm going is going to be to his liking, and he should get a decent enough situation in here. I'll take a shot with him. The horse, I think, is one of the more likely win contenders, and he may even slip through the cracks a little bit, just because I don't think people truly respect him, which I think is a little bit of a mistake. Is the 2 Spring Quality. Spring Quality won the Grade 1 Manhattan, and when it happened, people looked at it and said 18-1. Graham Motion's done it again, and I know Motion's barn is a little bit cool here. 1 for 32 at the time this is being recorded. I just kind of look at it and say, well, the form of the Manhattan is held up. He has 3 consecutive triple-digit buyers. His turf form overall, he's 2 for 4 lifetime, 3 times in the exacta. I don't have a heck of a lot here to knock about this horse. He's got a little bit of ability. He doesn't have to come from the back of the pack like he did in the Manhattan. That was just a product of the pace scenario. I think he could be more mid-pack. I think Spring Quality has a big chance in here. So those would be the 2 main ones for me in this spot. And then if you had to go a little bit deeper, you always have to respect Sadler's Joy. Sadler's Joy won this race last year, and it boils down to you need to time the run perfectly. Because if you don't, he's going to pull up when he makes the front, or he's going to have a little bit too much to do late. He ran on in spite of the ground, and I don't think he appreciated the soft going. I think he was one of the main players in there that didn't like the real sort of give to the ground. Get him back over some firm ground. Let him hear his feet rattle. I think he's going to come with a big effort. High Happy, I'm not quite as high on, just simply because I felt like that Manhattan may have been the start of him starting to tail off form. He did some funny things with the lead changes. I recognize he ran well. He was only beaten a half length and he finished 3rd in there, but I just, High Happy's the one that, you know what, I'm going to be against him in this spot. So 3 horses for me in some sort of variation. If you're playing Ticket Maker, you can use it with different A's, B's, and C's, whatever it may be. 5, 2, and 10. Highland Sky for me over Spring Quality, over Sadler's Joy. Admittedly, I think Spring Quality might be one of the more likely winners in here, but I just kind of like the price that I'm going to get on Highland Sky, and I think he's finally going to get to do what he wants. Is he good enough? We'll find out. But he's going to be a very square price. Square enough that I'm willing to take a shot and have a little bit of a bet on him. That wraps up the first 5. If you're alive, maybe you're alive for stacks of cash. And you also happen to get the main event of the entire Saratoga meeting. Let's move on. Race number 11, the Grade 1 Travers. Here it is, the main event, the Grade 1 Travers. 3-year-olds, 1.25 miles on the main track. Oh, it's a fun field. No Justify, no Triple Crown winner, but that doesn't mean that there's not intrigue in this field. You've got a filly taking on the boys and Wonder Godot. You've got Good Magic, the reigning 2-year-old champion. He's coming in here in fine form after a nice victory down at the Jersey Shore at Monmouth Park in the Grade 1 Haskell. And then you've got the local hopes. You've got the horses coming out of the Jim Dandy. You've got the runner-up in the Belmont Stakes and Gronkowski. You've got a handful. Oh, and by the way, you've got, do you think I was going to forget about my son? One of my favorites, Mendelssohn. He's coming back. This was a race to me that I don't think there's a standout by any stretch of the imagination. I understand people that like Good Magic. He can certainly win this race. He looks like a horse to me that I don't know that he's gotten any better. Maybe he doesn't have to get any better. Maybe a 98 or a 99 or barely scratching 100 is going to be good enough to win in here. It's entirely possible. To me, he just seems like a bad bet in this race. I think likewise with Gronkowski, and I hate to say this because I think Gronkowski, his run in the Belmont Stakes was tremendous. But I think between the name and everyone seeing how well he ran in the Belmont Stakes, he has the highest last out buyer in the field with a 99. To me, he's the kind of horse that I respect him. I think he can run well. I believe I picked him second. I'm not going to be surprised at all if he wins this race. I just, again, from a betting standpoint, don't know that I love him. I think you also have to talk about the pace situation in this race because down to the inside you have Trigger Warning, which, by the way, throw this in your DRF horse watch. I like Trigger Warning. I think he's a nice little horse. I think this distance is way too far. I thought the problem and the reason he lost the Ohio Derby was the distance. I thought the reason he lost the Indiana Derby was the distance. Those races were at 1 1/8 miles and 1 1/16 miles. Would have loved to have seen this horse, I don't know, the Smarty Jones. Keep him at a distance that works. 1.25 miles? Maybe I'll sit here and look like a fool afterward. I think he's really nice. I think he's a talented little horse. I just don't think this distance is right for him. But nonetheless, he figures to go. He's going to be forwardly placed. After that, who are you looking at, really? Not a lot of speed. Perhaps Mendelssohn, and I'm going to stand by it. Maybe he's not as good as I thought he was. I would imagine if they're coming back, they've got to be confident. And no, I'm not picking him. But I'm rooting for him. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't rooting for him. I hope he runs well. I think he's going to run better than he did in the Dwyer. Can he win? I don't know. I don't think you're going to get a UAE Derby. I don't think you're going to get a Kentucky Derby. Maybe you get a slightly improved effort from the Dwyer, and even a slightly improved effort from the Dwyer. That's not going to be good enough to win. I just expect a better effort from him here. I picked him third. I picked Gronkowski second. The horse I picked in fourth is the number 9. That's Good Magic. Again, just from a sheer ability standpoint, I think he's going to be able to work at a decent enough trip, but I'm just not totally convinced that he's taken a step forward. The replay I'm about to show you, and this might seem a little bit odd, we're going to show you a 2-year-old race. And I know we're toward, 3/4 of the way through most of these horses' 3-year-old campaign. And I haven't even mentioned Wonder Godot yet. And I'm not going to show you a Wonder Godot tape. I'm going to show you the Grade 2 Remsen. This was a try on dirt and the first time for a horse that, you know what, I'll give you all the rundown and the reasoning behind it. Here's Catholic Boy winning last year's Remsen. John Embriol on the call.
They come off the turn and enter the stretch. And here is Catholic Boy now to take over the lead. Catholic Boy in front as they pass the 3/16 pole. Catholic Boy with a 3-length lead. Then Avery Island and Vouch and Tap Rap Strike and Alcatam. But it's Catholic Boy, and he may have grown up some today. Catholic Boy wins the Remsen under Manny Franco. Avery Island was second, and Vouch finished.
Hear me out with Catholic Boy. Catholic Boy, highest last out, co-highest anyway, with a 99. Now, I happened to come on turf when he won the Belmont Derby. In each of his past 2 turf starts, he has looked like he is dead in the water and defeated in deep stretch by Analyze It, only to come back, rally again, and get the job done. I'm sure there are going to be people that disagree with this. I am not totally convinced that he is not better, that Catholic Boy is not better on dirt than he is on turf. I'm not totally convinced of that. And I know everyone and their brother, when they first were toying with the idea of running him in the Travers, they were saying, my God, you're going to, like, why would you run a turf horse on the dirt again? You're going to ruin him, X, Y, and Z. And at face value, if you just look at the paper, that would sort of bear out. But hear me out. The Remsen, as impressive as that effort was, you can't just tell me that all of a sudden that the horse, just that one day, he happened to just catch a flyer and was awesome. There's clearly some ability on the main track. Then you go back to earlier this year. He comes off the layoff in the Sam F. Davis. That's down at Tampa Bay Downs. First start in 2 months. So I thought he ran like a short horse. I thought he got up close to Flame Away and he just flattened out at the very end. To me, that was a sign of a short horse. Then he's gone for about 6 weeks and they bring him back in the Florida Derby, which we find out he bleeds so badly he needs to be laid up until early June. So you can't use the Florida Derby as an example of whether he can or can't handle the main track. The Sam F. Davis, if you want to say he hung, that's your call. I have it written down, and I wrote it down right after the race was over, that it was a fine effort off the bench, appeared a bit short. And again, keep in mind, they were thinking Kentucky Derby with this horse. The idea was not to win the Sam F. Davis. It was to get him continuing forward and peaking the first Saturday in May. After the Florida Derby, draw a line through it. Now you go back to the turf with him, which I thought at the time was a very, very rational and expected sort of move. Runs well in the Pine Ridge, wins the Belmont Derby. Now he's a Grade 1 winner on turf. And I said it immediately after that. I would have been stunned if they did not run him here in the Travers. You can go back to the recap edition and listen to that. Mainly because, from a breeding standpoint, his value as a Grade 1 winner on turf and dirt would go through the roof as opposed to a Grade 1 winner on turf, and then he followed it up with a nice win in the, the Saranac or whatever else it may be. No disrespect to that race, but this was an absolute no-brainer. I like the outside draw. I like the speed he brings to the game. Distance isn't a problem for him. And if you're arguing to me, I just don't necessarily believe that you can sit there and no one with certainty, I don't even think Jonathan Thomas could with certainty say that this horse is actually better on turf than he is on dirt. I think there's a real scenario where he might be just as good, if not better, on the dirt than he is on the turf. We'll find out. I think he's going to offer a decent little value. Maybe he's in that 5-6 to 1 range when it's all said and done. The distance isn't a problem. He has tactical speed. I like the draw from the outside. I'm going with Catholic Boy. Picking Catholic Boy to win this year's Travers. I'm going to pick him over Gronkowski, over Mendelssohn, over Good Magic. I'm rooting for Good Magic. I'm rooting for Mendelssohn. Not that I'm not rooting for Good Magic, but I'm rooting for Mendelssohn. I'm rooting for Catholic Boy, and I'm rooting for Wonder Godot. I don't think she is quite up to the same level as the best boys in here. The distance is the great equalizer. I think they would be very, very happy. Well, I'm sure the Connections want to win. I think they should be very, very thrilled if they get a piece, if she runs a good third. I think she should have been running in the Alabama if they didn't want to run in the third leg of the Canadian Triple Crown. But you know what? It's not my horse. They're taking a shot here, and probably with some sort of an idea or a thought of, if we have any chance to win 3-year-old filly, we need to beat the boys in the Travers, and then we need to go and win the distaff. I recognize that. That's fine. I'm rooting for her. I hope she runs well and just gives a good account of herself. But to me, the race, and as far as the pick is concerned, I'm picking Catholic Boy, and I would probably go 3 deep as far as the pick 6 is concerned. I would use Catholic Boy, I would use Mendelssohn, I would use Gronkowski. As far as the horses coming out of the Jim Dandy, I said it afterward in the recap. Again, you can go back and find that. Vino Rosso could easily win this race, but I have no idea if he's got his head figured out. If he puts it all together, he is as likely a win candidate as there is, because 1.25 miles is what he wants. Tenfold, he took a right-hand turn. Steve Asmussen continues to say, he goes, I believe it was something along the lines of, we're freakishly concerned. If he does that, he can't win. But if he straightens things out, yeah, obviously he's a contender. It's a fun race. No Justify, but that doesn't mean that it's not a race that lacks intrigue and potentially offers some nice betting options and opportunities. So that's a little bit of a quick look at the Pick 6, the all Grade 1 Pick 6 sequence on Travers Saturday up at the Spa. Races 6 through 11, a very, very brief look. There's going to be scratches, there'll be changes, there'll be X, Y, and Z, and I don't know what I'm going to do with my picks just yet. But I gave you my top pick in each one of these races and perhaps some other horses to consider. For me, we'll button this thing up. The Grade 1 Travers, race number 11, I'm going to go with the 11 horse, Catholic Boy, over Gronkowski, over Mendelssohn. If you've been listening to this live on Friday, thank you for doing so. Live.drf.com, livestream.com, the Daily Racing Forms Twitter handle, at DRF Inside Post, as well as the Daily Racing Forms Facebook page. If you've been listening to this podcast, like most of you do, YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, video.drf.com, as well as Spotify. If you're over on YouTube, click that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up. If you're over on iTunes, write us a review, give us a positive rating. Questions, comments, concerns, fire away at me on Twitter, at Bernier_Matt, or beneath the video player on the YouTube channel. As we always do, we're going to button this thing up and throw it into the latest edition of Out of the Gate. It is a Travers-centric edition of Out of the Gate. You've already listened to the DRF Players podcast with Peter Thomas Fornatel and Jonathan Kinchin. And look, it should just be a fun weekend of racing. And you've got good racing out at Del Mar as well on Saturday. So wherever you're going to play, however you're going to play, and whatever you are playing, best of luck this weekend. I'll be back with the recap edition on Tuesday at noon. My name is Matt Bernier, and this has been the preview edition of the Matt Bernier Show. Good luck this weekend.